So, first of all, I'd like to welcome everyone. I don't think I have to introduce myself. I think everyone knows who I am. But for purposes of the video that we're doing of this talk, I will say that my name is Dan Chill, and I'm the founder and also the managing director of G'ina Gallery, and I'm planning to speak a little bit about the gallery tonight. I've been asked by a couple of people to stress the fact that this is an Ezol Mugan, and God forbid if there is a siren or something like that, people can stay seated because we are protected. Yes. The other thing that I'd like to highlight is the fact that this is really the first of a two-segment presentation. This is my presentation. Jan, my colleague, who's the artistic director of the gallery, is going to be speaking a week from now, and several of you have actually signed on for both. But yes, question? Anyone have a question? Okay. Just to highlight the fact that the subject is the same subject in a sense. What do I mean by that? We're both going to be speaking about naive art, but I'm going to be speaking about it, if you'll excuse the expression, from the heart. And Jan, although she has a very warm heart, is going to be speaking about it from this idea of looking upon it more from the professional academic aspect. There will be times maybe that I will start to, what they say in Hebrew, liglosh, to maybe Jan's area, and she might be wanting to come back to my area as well because we're speaking of the same genre. But you'll find that the stress is going to be quite different. So we're going to. A lot of people here sitting here think that they're still in Tel Aviv and in the state of Israel, but actually, once you've crossed the threshold of G'ina Gallery, as you know, you've entered into a different world, a magical world. Some people say, actually, that Cervantes should have called his famous novel, instead of Don Quixote, Dan Quixote, that I have, when I opened this gallery 20 years ago, actually was tilting at windmills, in essence. The only thing that I think is quite inappropriate is that as you remember the story of Don Quixote, he was tilting at windmills thinking that they're errant knights about to harm Dulcinea, and therefore it was sort of an imaginary enemy. And I'm quite the opposite, really. First of all, I don't think I'm tilting at windmills, but secondly, my goal is really to quite the opposite, to reveal the beauties of this wonderful genre. So let me take you on a journey. This is going to be a journey which, and excuse me for getting a little bit emotional occasionally, because this is a journey that really is less connected with Don Quixote and more connected with Peter Pan. Why do I say that? Because if you remember the words from J.M. Barrie's Peter Pan, he said, if I remember the words, "So come with me where dreams are born and time is never planned. So think of happy things and let your heart float on wings together and forever in Never, Never Land." And I think that if you look upon naive art from the standpoint of the world of art and in general, it is sort of a never, never land of art. It's an area of art that we will go into in a moment, touches people's hearts, and we're going to try to figure out why, together. But before I do that, I want to relate to you a story, actually bringing you back when I was a little boy. Now, people in my family back there say, forget about the past tense. You are a little boy. And the fact is that maybe that is really true. But when I was a little boy, I remember around 10, 11 years old, there was an advertisement in television about another little boy, but he was a little bit older, and he was coming back from school, and he looked at his father, and he said, "Dad, my teacher I asked her a question, and she told me, no, that's a question that I can't answer. You have to speak to your father. The father, of course, again, this is all on television. The father looks and he gets a little bit worried because he's worried about this young man about to enter puberty is going to ask this question. And he sort of, worries and grabs his hands. And then the little boy looks up and he says, "Daddy, why is the sky blue?" And that question, which again, I have to feel a little bit emotional about, because that question, the father looks back at him and he said, "Oh, the sky is blue." Well, the sky is blue because, well, why is the sky blue? And then this is actually turns out to an advertisement about the World Book Encyclopedia. Why should you all buy the World Book Encyclopedia? Because you're going to learn why the sky is blue. Why do I raise that question? Within 3 or 4 kilometers from this gallery, you're going to find one of the finest educational institutions. It's called the Tel Aviv University. A few tens of kilometers to the southwest of us, in Jerusalem, you're going to find another fine institution. It's called the Hebrew University. Nearby there, you're going to find the Bezalel Academy. I mentioned those 3 important art institutions that also have an important art faculty because when you go to the head of the art faculty in Tel Aviv, in Hebrew University, in Bezalel, and ask them the question, what is Impressionism? What is Expressionism? What is Fauvism, Dadaism, Cubism? All these different isms or abstract art. They say, oh, of course. And they go on to a 10 or 15-minute dissertation about what those genres of art is. But if you ask them the question, what is naive art? A blank. Or you do often get the answer, oh, naive art. And this is an Israeli art aficionado, or art expert speaking. Oh, naive art, well, that's Shalom of Tzfat, the Zeigermacher. And the answer is yes. Shalom of Tzfat is a wonderful naive artist of Israel. But I didn't ask who is a naive artist. I asked, what is naive art? Blank. And if you do that in Harvard, in Yale, in Stanford, in the United States, no matter where you go and you ask those questions in the United States, they'll say, what is naive art? Oh, that's Grandma Moses. And the answer is, yes, Grandma Moses is a wonderful naive artist, but what is naive art? Blank. In the Sorbonne, you ask the question, what is naive art? Oh, naive art, that's Henri Rousseau. That's the Paul Gauguin Tahitian period. And the answer is, yes, those are wonderful naive artists. But what is naive art? Blank. Why are these very fine, beautiful experts of the art world unable to define for us that simple question or give us an answer to this simple question? That's what we're going to look in today. I'm going to look into it from my perspective. I think Mayan will touch upon it from a different perspective later on. So let's try to figure out what is naive art. Because I think that one of the 2 goals that I have tonight is that when you leave the gallery tonight, you will be a greater expert of naive art than 99.9% of the art establishment, the people who are expert in art. You will be able to explain what it is, and that's one of my goals, because I'd like you, when you leave the threshold of the gallery this evening, you're going to turn out to be our ambassadors of goodwill. So, what is naive art? Well, naive art, first of all, as you all know, because you've been here many times, it's not a style, right? We have a lot of styles. Let's look at some of these styles. A naive artist from Australia has a particular style, but we see that it has a subject that's quite unique. If you look at a naive artist and the artist is from the United States, then the subject may be what's called what would you call it? I would call it a little gathering on a green where they have a festival of artisan work and the sales, and you might think of some of the songs that they sing in the United States about these areas of the world, and this will be an American naive art work. If you go to Central America, and an artist is painting under a magnifying glass. Then you have an artist showing Nicaragua with all the different things of the work. And again, it's a totally different style of naive art, right? And it certainly shows that naive art is not a style, is not one style. And then you look at a painting from Peru with a beautiful Andes and the post-Inca tribes in the mountains, and you see that you have a totally different style of art. So naive art is not a style. Naive art is a genre, just like Impressionism, Dadaism, Cubism, all of these abstract art. All of these are genres, streams of art, but they have common elements. So let's start with the elements. Let's go to in a sense, to the beginning. Let's start at the very beginning. It's a very good place to start. So the beginning is a simple, easy to understand scene. Wow. Simple, easy to understand scene. Here, a scene from Michael Falk, for example. We don't have to people tell us that it's a biblical theme, and it's Akedat Yitzchak. And the theme is very, very clear. We don't have anyone coming, we don't bring our psychiatrist with us to explain to us what's hidden behind this painting. If you look at a painting from, let's say, Argentina, from the Pampas area of Argentina, we don't need, again, a Perush Rashi of what's happening here. A simple, easy to understand scene. A non-Jewish theme of a church in Buenos Aires. Again, we don't need people to tell us that this is a church and we're seeing a religious theme going on, right? So the simple, easy to understand scene is one of the basic tenets of naive art. But that's only one. Now let's go to the next. And the fact is that every artwork in the naive world is somewhat idealized. We're not looking at the way normal eyes look at a scene and see a scene like ours, but rather the artist is looking upon the scene with an idealized view of the world. Why do I say that? Look at Mickey Falk's painting. I mentioned this to Dr. Paul Fenster earlier. The subject of Akedat Yitzchak is actually a negative subject. How can an artist create an idealized view of the story of Akedat Yitzchak? Well, he's done it very well. And how did he do it? He's taken the different parts of the story and placed them in different parts of the painting, but never bringing the ultimate Akedah into the scene. So we have Avram going off with his son, Yitzchak. Unbeknownst to him, he's going to supposedly the Akedah. We have the altar up there somewhere. Again, it's in the middle of the scene, but Yitzchak is not realizing that that's where he's going. And then we have Sarah here fretting and worrying. Oh my gosh, where are you taking my son, my only son? The ram is here because we know the ram is going to happen later. And there is the angel flying into the scene, about to stop everything. But everything is like converging. It hasn't happened. The whole negative theme, the worry about what might happen, is all in the mind of us as we watch this scene develop. And so, again, the idealization of the scene can be quite incredible, how a negative subject can actually become kept in a positive way, with everyone looking wonderfully in the way in which the artist has depicted it. So we have a simple, easy to understand scene, also an idealized scene. But what about the enchanting innocence? The artist is not looking upon the world as many of us, unfortunately, are geared to look upon the world, with a certain cynicism, a certain bikortiyut, a certain negative look, and what's, is there something behind this and everything like that? No. The artist looks upon the world with an enchanting innocence, because every scene that we see here is actually looking upon the most positive aspects of the scene. You would realize that someone who's working in the fields in Brazil is sweating under the heat and the humidity and everything like that, but no, everyone is smiling, the guitar playing, he has music and everything like that, because the world of naive art and the artist, even though he may come from the poorest community in the world, he still has his heart singing. This is the way the heart sings. And we say of the naive artist that she takes her brush and she puts it in her heart, dips it in her heart, and she begins to paint. And so we feel that this is a message from the heart of the artist to our hearts. And again, we're starting to figure, why are these paintings speaking so specially to us? Because those three elements by themselves are enough to grab us and keep us riveted to the painting. Now, keep in mind also, you might ask, and some people have asked, well, wait a second, why is naive art called naive art? And the answer is for those three elements. We're going to come to some more. We're going to talk about more characteristics, more elements, but there are three elements that are key, and those elements: looking upon the world simply, looking upon the world ideally, looking upon the world innocently. All those characteristics are the characteristics of a naive person. Now, when naive art began, and we're going to come to when naive art began, and we'll joke a little bit about it, but let's talk about when the official, and might even look upon it from an academic standpoint, the official time that it began was maybe in certain countries different, but let's talk about France, and we're talking about Rousseau and Paul Gauguin. And when it began in those countries, they were not called naive. What were they called? Primitive. Yes, primitive. And the reason why they were called primitive was because, well, first of all, they were called primitive because the art establishment at that time looked upon the Impressionists, who were painting at the same time as Gauguin and as Rousseau. The art establishment looked upon these as the outsiders of the world. Oh my goodness, God forbid that they should be brought into the salon and anything. No. If you want to show your paintings out in the Champs-Élysées, and by the way, that happened. Rousseau paints a painting of actually all the different artists painting on the Champs-Élysées, and that's where they were allowed to paint. So they the art critics, looked upon Rousseau and Gauguin slightly differently from the Impressionists. They didn't call them. They didn't call them the naives at that time. They called them the primitives because they said, oh, they didn't go to art school. God forbid that they should go to art. They didn't go to art school, so they're going to be called primitive. So okay, for a while that was accepted, but at some point in time, as other artists began to paint in the same genre as time went on in other countries, the artists started to say, wait a second, why are you calling us primitives? It's true, and we're going to come to another element now of the naive world, and that is, it's true we are autodidact. We're self-taught. We did not undergo formal training in art school. It's true, but that doesn't mean we're primitive people. We may have a PhD in architecture, a PhD in philosophy, a PhD in literature. So why call us primitives? So then they asked, well, what would you like to be called? And that's when the artist said, well, if you really want to know, we look upon the world simply. We look upon the world ideally. We look upon the world enchantingly, innocently. Those are characteristics of a naive person. And by the way, if the world were run by some naive people, wouldn't it be a most wonderful world rather than the chaos that we have outside? So that stuck. And so those elements began to become the basis for the reason why we call it naive art. Now, I've sold you some elements, but I have not mentioned all of them by any means. Let's look at some paintings, even by this same artist, Michael Falk, and look at the colors that he uses in his painting of this scene of Solomon meeting with Malkat Shva. Let's look at other colors. If you look at the world, even it doesn't matter. You go to Argentina, you can go to a painting from Italy, you can go to a painting from any country in the world, and especially if you look at the Guatemalans and look at those colors and you say, wow, those are colors that grab our hearts, right? And we say in Hebrew, sort of like koveshet halev, it's like, it's riveting in that we want, our eyes can't get off of the scene. So colorful scene is a very, very important element of naive art, and it's joined with another, and that's the punctilious detail, the great detail, the unbelievable detail. Let's let's again look at a couple of paintings that give some examples of that. And I'd like to actually show you a painting which will take this off the easel and we'll put a painting on. And this is the painting by a Honduran artist of Noah's Ark. Now, again, I happen to have on the easel right now a couple of biblical scenes, but the artists don't only show biblical themes, but just look at the detail here. If you try under a magnifying glass, he works, and therefore if you look here, you'll see that every blade of grass is painted, every leaf on every tree is painted. And when you ask the artist, wait a second, you know, if you had painted 6 or 7 leaves on that tree, I would know it's a tree. And then the artist comes back and he says, yes, but without those 6,713 leaves on that tree, for me it's not a tree. And that's what's important, because I want you to see what your normal eyes are missing. You're missing the beauty of nature through this wonderful punctilious detail that I'm sharing with you. And so again, we have another aspect of the element of naive art. Then you come to another subject which we are very, very careful about using wording here, and everyone in Hebrew knows the difference between yaldi and yalduti. Well, in English it's the same, childlike, childish. Childlike being positive, childish being negative. And I use those words because we look upon naive art in many cases, showing what we call childlike perspective. Now, what do I mean by that? If you look at the scene here, and childlike scale, I should add, those are two elements that come together, you notice that all the people, I mean, it's true, these people are pretty big, but all of these people here, doesn't matter how far back you go, they're all the same size. And some of them are actually closer in and are smaller than the people farther away, so it makes absolutely no sense. And the answer is, well, it doesn't have to make sense, because these artists are not have not gone through the faculty of art, and therefore they have not been told the rule that, wait a second, if you're going to paint a painting like this, the perspective has to be perfect, the scale has to be perfect. But they say to themselves, no, this is how our heart sings. We don't care about perfection. You think through our talent that you see here that we don't know how to paint perspective. You think that if we wanted to devote our efforts, we couldn't paint proper scale. The answer is, of course we could, but that's not important to us. This is how we sing, our heart sings. And by the way, why don't you ask Picasso why that woman has 5 faces looking in all sorts of strange directions, and ask them why that woman has 5 faces. Oh, that's your Picasso, your heart sings in that way? Okay, vakasha. But don't then challenge us why our paintings are not showing proper perspective. So those elements are very, very important, and we've listed them very carefully, but believe it or not, I have not mentioned to you the most important element of all of the naive world. And the most important element of all the naive world is the celebration of the human narrative. Now, those words sound very simple. It's a phrase that sort of is catchy, celebration of the human narrative, but what does it mean? Okay, so now let's look and try to understand what it means. And let's look at a narrative, for example, from Serbia. This is an artist, Dobrisav Milojevic. I'm not sure if you're able to see it. I'm going to put it on the easel. And this is Dobrisav Milojevic, is a great Serbian artist. And in his home, who of course I've visited several times, in his home we see a scene similar to this. Of course, it's idealized and totally innocent way of painting the scene. But he sees the shepherd going out to the flock and everything like that. And notice the sky is clear, almost of clouds. The heartwarming, happy, very compositionally beautiful scene of a Serbian artist. Now this is Serbia, but let's look at a couple of other examples in this area. So we are going to go, actually I have it down here on the floor, and we're going to go to a country that is kissing Serbia, right against Serbia, actually part of the old Yugoslavia, and that is the country of Croatia. Now look at the sky in Croatia. Look at the trees in Croatia. Look at the people in Croatia. And you say, wait a second, you just told us that everything is very idealized. Well, yes, it is true that almost everything, there's always an exception that proves the rule. Well, the Croatians paint in this way and celebrate a narrative of their own because of a historical aberration. What took place in Croatia in 1920s? The Earth Movement. And the Earth Movement began out of basically a revolt, basically, of the farming community against the central government because they were so upset at the payments that they were the poor payments that they were receiving for their produce. And so the farmers began dumping their produce or not delivering them to the central government and the like. The artists, some of whom also were farmers, decided to show in Croatia the revolt through their paintings. And although, again, they know that their hearts were still singing and they were reluctant to paint things too negatively. But rather than, as we saw here, this happy, bright colors, the sky so clear, the birds singing in the trees, here the trees all of a sudden don't have leaves. And the gloomy snow scene all of a sudden takes over, and it seems like a more dark, foreboding environment. And so you see the narrative changes even in two countries that are one next to the other. Now, for example, in Brazil, we have Barbara Rochlitz painting connection with the land, the common folk, the love of the people, the everyday activities. And that, you will see, is celebration and narrative from Brazil. But let's see if we can find even an Argentinian narrative that obviously is the Pampas area of Argentina, or this Argentinian narrative, which is in Buenos Aires, but is a more urban narrative. You will never see this scene in El Salvador, because there's no El Salvadorian scene that would have such a very interesting church, in particular with the way people are dressed inside the church. This scene in Argentina, in the Pampas, you're not going to see necessarily in New York City, because in New York City, you're not going to see this broad farming. Now, it could be in New York State. There might be some places out in New York State. But again, this is a narrative that's very, very different from country to country, from artist to artist, and the like. And so the celebration of the human narrative brings this final little puzzle together, and we now sort of have a full picture of what is naive art all about. So now you're able to become the experts on that, but I'd like you also to appreciate another aspect in this talk that I'm giving, and that is, why is this gallery so special? And when you think about it, when I say the words that G'Neh Gallery is the only gallery in the history of the world, not just in Israel, not in the world, but in the history of the world, that touches the world of naive art, the international aspect of naive art, there's a reason for it. And the reason is you're looking at probably the craziest person in the history of the world, because there's no other gallery owner who has ever created a gallery who's been willing to take his backside off of the chair where he's sitting in his desk and actually travel to the artist. But we're not talking about the artists in their own country. Oh, that would be too much. We're talking about artists in 35 countries, 120, sometimes even 200 artists, where the gallery owner has to actually get to the home of every artist in order to be able to bring back those paintings. Because some of these artists, it's true, live near the Champs-Élysées of Paris, but some, their address is 150 meters south of the football field in the middle of a loch in Nicaragua. And so, unfortunately, these are artists that, unless you come to them, their artwork will never come to you. And that's why, basically, this gallery has been created because of a story that I'm about to tell you, of my own story, and why it's really rather counterintuitive that this could have ever happened. And what do I mean by that? How did this puzzle actually, in this aspect of the puzzle, come about? Well, as you probably know, I'm an international commercial lawyer traveling on behalf of my clients around the world, and that's my education. And so one would say, well, there's absolutely no way that this guy is going to do anything about art in general, especially not naive art. But how did it happen? How did it happen, actually, I'm going to look around for the painting that began it all, was actually, Yossi Bjostek is here, and he knows that I worked at Israel Aircraft Industries. And when I was traveling with Moshe Keret, who at the time was not the Mankal, he was at that time, I think, the head of marketing of Tasiya Avirit, and we traveled to Honduras, and we were in Honduras for a while and closing a deal on behalf of the government, or the behalf of Israel Aircraft. And after the deal was concluded, we left the hotel, and we had an hour or two to spend in whatever way we would like. And basically, we walked out of the hotel, and opposite the hotel, there was a little, I would call it a store, but maybe it was more than a store. Maybe it was a little shop. A shop, yes, you remember. Yes, a shop. So, but in that shop, in the window, and by the way, you're going to be shocked because you're going to ask yourself, how is this possible? That this painting was in that window and actually was the painting that caused the whole thing to begin. As I say, it's so counterintuitive that it all began because of this painting. Now, this is a painting by an artist who's, if you look up in the lower part of the painting, you'll see that he signed it. It's a signed painting, but you can't discern who the artist is, and there's no way of knowing who it is. But the proprietor of the store said, "Oh, this is a young artist. He's about to start out on a new career, and he's painting the scene, and it's a naive scene from Honduras." Okay. I knew nothing about it. I knew nothing, not to ask any questions. And I told Moshe Keret at the time, who was in the store with me, there's something about this painting that captures me. I felt like I'm a magnet, like bringing me in and in. And when I thought about it later, look at this painting for a section and remember what I said about idealization. The subject of a bullfight can't be farther from a happy scene, right? God forbid the bull, God forbid the guy who's about to kill the bull, the people in the stands are crying to kill him. All this is going on, and yet this scene, if you look very carefully, has caused a bullfight to be an idealized happy scene. Why? Number one, the matador is a child. It's not a matador person. It's a young little child. The bull is a young bull and doesn't seem to be very threatening. The people are all children. Why are they children? Because the whole bull ring is actually not a real bull ring. It's actually created, it's like a prefab. It's like a prefab thing that they set it up and they bring it down and they create the little stands and the children come and watch this go on, and it's like a scene of a play. It's like a play on the scene of a real civilian bull ring and everything. So this is a bullfight scene, and this is by an artist that he explained to me. He was a very, very good artist, and how much does it cost? Well, I realize it's a lot of money, he said, but it really, unfortunately, I have to ask for $100. Well, for me, it didn't sound so bad at that time. Moshe Keret said, well, I'm not so interested in this, and he walked out the store. I bought the painting. And I brought it back, and Abby, my wife, who's sitting in the audience today, she remembers how we brought it back. We put it on the wall, and it sort of spoke to us. We sort of liked it, but for me, I think it spoke even more. And then what happened was something very interesting. I said to myself, this is really very interesting, but I'd like to try to find more artwork of this, but where am I going to find it? So what I did when I went back to other countries, and remember, I was an international commercial lawyer traveling on behalf of clients and closing deals all over the world, and it's not only Tasiya Avirit, but then it became Shaul Eisenberg, the crazy Shaul Eisenberg with his 15 offices in China, and then Benny Landa and Indigo and the like, and gradually over the course of time I began to come to different hotels, and I spoke to the concierge and telling them that I'd like to see scenes of this nature from different artists in the local countries. And slowly but surely, I built up a little personal collection of artwork, and we began putting paintings in our living room in the house. And at some point, something very interesting happened. The people who, up until we started putting paintings on the walls from the naive world in our living room, those people used to speak, until that time, about politics, weather, personal matters, things like that. All of a sudden, everyone started to speak about what they saw on the walls. Now, at the first time, I thought, oh, people are being, kindly. They don't want to harm my feelings and everything like that. But it happened over and over again. And at some point in time, when even the delivery man or the postman come in and he starts wanting to know what's going on, I said to myself, wait a second, what's so special? I know I love it. I'm crazy about it. I love it. But what is so special that's talking to people's hearts, to people? They want to know more about it. And then slowly but surely, it took me a little while, but the light bulb lit up, and I realized that what I was creating in my own home was a mini naive art gallery, quote gallery, which unfortunately, because it was in my home, only the people who came into my home saw it. But I said to myself, you know what? When I think about it, because I've been going around the world, there's no other gallery that's ever been created to show the international side of naive art. Now, this idea came to me, but Abby remembers, my wife remembers, that it took 12 years of joking about it and thinking about it and cogitating about it and eventually making a decision about it to actually say, okay, well, I'm going to leave a world that I felt very comfortable swimming in and very, thank God, very successful swimming in, the world of commercial international law, and go into a world that I knew nothing about. Creating a gallery, the world of art in general, for sure I didn't know, but I knew a little bit about naive art. And what I learned, the most important thing in law school was the most important thing to know is what you don't know. And once I knew that I didn't know, then I knew that in order to create a gallery like this, I would have to hire people who know how to run a gallery. I would have to know how to hire an interior decorator. But what's most important, and I think many of you feel this feeling, is I wanted this gallery to be a home away from home. Yours, not mine, but yours. Namely, that the people who would come into the gallery would have a feeling that, wow, this is where we want to come. This is where we need. This is a tranquil Shangri-La from the horrible things that are going out in our lives. And this is what I was hoping to do, because I wanted, in addition to people enjoying the art and letting, by the way, the magicians are on the walls. You're not looking at the magician. The magicians are on the walls. But I wanted, in addition to the art speaking for itself, to have the ambiance of a feeling of really being in your home, away from home, where even you could come, sit down, enjoy the library, an international level of naive art books, and sit and eat cake and have a bottle of beer or a bottle of wine or coffee or whatever, and just enjoy here and being here, away from everything. Because some people joke and say at this point, which means that I think in some ways we've succeeded, that we come here because it's a way of avoiding having to go to our psychiatrist every month. And so, in a sense, that's really a wonderful, heartwarming mention to me, because it somehow tells me that we have succeeded. So this is a background of the creation of the gallery, but eventually the gallery opened, and I was told at the time, again, people thinking that maybe Cervantes should have called his novel Don Quixote, that, oh, you think that this is going to succeed with bringing naive art to Israel? The Israelis don't know anything about it. This is going to be not 20 years, it'll be 20 days maybe, and you'll see walking out the exit door. No, but in the end, as you probably, or some of you know, this gallery has actually, thank God, become the most popular gallery in Israel's history. What do I mean by that? בדיוק. Because again, the bookies, people were going with the bookies to make a bet of how long we'll be here. Well, we sort of fooled people. And the reason why we fooled people, again, these are the magicians. And their magic show is what's on the walls. And slowly but surely, another thing came to mind and came to me, which, because I realized that over the course of time, this gallery cannot exist unless I go back every time to the homes of these artists and actually bring back the paintings, because they're not going to be able to do it by themselves. And so that became the tradition, and the respect and honor that the artists began to feel was a very critical element in making sure that we would see the creme de la creme of the artworks from their homes into this gallery, which again is something very heartwarming that I felt was very important to guarantee us. Because when I went back to these artists just before I created the gallery, and I said, listen, you know, I've been a collector for a long time, but I need to be sure that if I open up this gallery, can we present paintings that will be at the price point, at the quality point, and at the quantity point where we have enough paintings that will be able to succeed. And they assured me that it would, and it took me a whole year of doing this fact-finding before actually opening the gallery. So when the gallery opened, all of a sudden, instead of being a flop, it became a sensation. And when I said that it became the most popular gallery, most galleries, if you ask a gallery owner, how many people come to a gallery in a day, most gallery owners say, well, we're lucky we have 1 or 2 or 3 people. Well, we used to have, at the beginning, again, it was the first 10, 15 years of the gallery, we used to have between 15 to 25 or 30 people coming every day. And we were selling, and have sold actually almost entirely during the 20-year period, 1 painting a day. Now, that doesn't sound like so much, right? Or some people does. Some people realize. But you should know that no gallery in the history of the world, forget about naive art, but no gallery in the history of the world has ever sold 1 painting a day for 20 years. And the reason, again, you're not looking at the reason. The reason is on the walls, because these paintings speak to people's hearts. These paintings cause people to feel good. They feel it's radiating so much love and joy. This is what I want to hang in my home, to change the ambiance of the home from what's the chaos that's going on outside. So again, it became very, very popular, and we saw it in very many ways, but of course it became popular because we had wonderful people who were helping me. I mean, Jan, everyone knows, is the most recent manager of the gallery for the last 6 years, 7 years. But in fact, we had wonderful people along the way, because as I said, the most important thing I realized to know is what I didn't know. And that what I didn't know is how to run a gallery. And so it was very important to have really wonderful people. And they've been absolutely the cement that have created the success in the gallery. So we all have seen over the course of time how the gallery has become a great success. And the reason why, as you know, it's sort of like a bittersweet moment for me and maybe for many of you, is because although the gallery has been a great success, it still has been a great challenge. And although I'm not sure whether I'm surprising anyone, I'm not getting quite any younger every day. I'm getting a little bit older every day. And I realized that at some point in time, it was important that rather than people carrying me out on a stretcher, I could actually walk out of the gallery on my own 2 feet by transferring, and not selling, but actually transferring on a silver platter to a new group that would take over the gallery and bring it to a new level, a level that I, and even with the wonderful talents of Jan, were not able to do, but with a new, younger group with a little bit more money, and that's a very important aspect about this, that would be able to bring this gallery to a level so that not only are we reaching the audience in Israel, which we have reached in the main, but not all, but at least reach the possibility of reaching an audience in Paris, an audience in London, an audience in New York, an audience in Tokyo, people with, I don't want to belittle the Israelis, but a little deeper pocket than the Israeli have. And that could create not only 1 painting a day being sold, but 5 paintings or 10 paintings a day being sold. Because this, again, can be without any top. It can just go on and on. And the art establishment is continuing to sell the dog made of balloons and for $25 or $40 million. So that's okay. But we're selling paintings that touch people's hearts, and that's most important for me. So I've given you a very broad review of the two most important things that I really want you to understand and leave the gallery with: the knowledge of what naive art is about and the understanding of the uniqueness of this particular gallery and this particular mission. And hopefully, I hope that you'll see paintings on the walls and see additional items that you'd like to add to your collection, because many of you are big supporters, and I want to thank you for that.
Did you tell the story about Goliath?
No, okay. Mayan does not want me to allow you to leave without knowing the story of this artist. It's true. It is an interesting story. This artist, again, and I mentioned the name, I haven't mentioned the name, but this artist I met through his painting in 1982 or 3 with Moshe Karen. And then I continued being an international lawyer and going around different countries and taking different paintings from all over the world, and never thought more about it. Couldn't read his signature, didn't know who the artist was, etc. When I created the gallery, I started with the gallery began with 75 artists from 10 different countries. And today, by the way, we're at 120 artists from 32 or 3, whatever it is, different countries. Okay. But we started with 75 artists from 10 different countries, and one of the countries was Guatemala. And when I returned to Guatemala after starting the gallery, I met with the person who's written the definitive book on Guatemalan naive art, and she said that, you know, if you're interested in going in other countries in Central America, I know of a couple of people I would introduce you to, and I know that they would be happy to help you find the naives of their countries. And those two countries happened to be El Salvador and Honduras. And so she gave me the name, the telephone number, and everything like that. She even did me the courtesy of calling these people and arranging that they actually meet my plane in the next, during the next week when I left Guatemala. And sure enough, when I got to El Salvador, there was a wonderful gentleman with my name in a sign, and he met me and he took me around El Salvador, and we had a wonderful experience, and I met some wonderful naive artists from El Salvador, and some of them, I'm not sure whether they're on here, but back there from Fausto Perez, I see a painting by him, and Alonso Flores might be somewhere around. So there are artists that I met thanks to her in El Salvador. But in Honduras, what happened was very interesting. The gentleman who met me at the airport in Honduras, and people know that in Honduras, the capital of Honduras is Tegucigalpa, and the airport there is in the middle of the city, literally the middle of the city, and you're coming in right over the rooftops and everything like that. And so we got there, and there was a big sign, Mr. Chill, and he said, he didn't say who he was. He just said, I've been told by Ploni Almoni from Guatemala to meet you because I understand you're interested in the naive art of Honduras. So I said, yes, it's wonderful, thank you very much. He spent the next 2.5 days with me, introducing, traveling, meeting the artists, going to the homes, everything fine. He also arranged for a translator so that we were understanding one another because I didn't speak Spanish. And I certainly didn't understand what he was saying. So various meetings, et cetera, and finally the third day, in the morning, we were about to go to the airport. And he said, oh, by the way, you know, on the way to the airport, maybe you'd like to stop by at my home because I'm also an artist. I'm not sure if you like my work. Walk into his home, Roca Zelaya. It turned out that gentleman who met me 20 some odd years after I came across this painting was the same artist who had painted this painting, and he, on the walls, all of a sudden had, oh my God. And so I just wanted to show you what I say by oh my God, because he had developed from that into this. And I'll let you, pass it around. And you look at how he has developed over the course of his career into a world-class, internationally renowned naive artist who works under a magnifying glass. Here he was not working under a magnifying glass. Here he was not using good materials, by the way, and that's the reason why some of these colors are fading now. But here on this artwork, you see you're talking about a world-class naive artist. And that same gentleman had developed in those 20 years from that to that. And I think it's important to thank you, Mayan, for reminding me about telling that story, because I'm also able to show you something very, very interesting about how artists develop. Because there is another painting back here. I'm trying to see which one it is. Let's just see. Yeah, that's that. That's not that. Okay, we're going to find it. Yeah, I think this is it. Yeah. So remember this painting that we had? Remember this painting that we had where this is the artist, a fantastic scene. I'll take off Rocca Zelaya for a second. A fantastic scene of a Noah's Ark, and really incredible, incredible. But that's how he's painting today. But when I first met that artist, he was painting like this. And if you notice the incredible difference, the incredible surge of talent that as a result of self-teaching, an artist who was painting in 1995, Germán Ramón Durán Lanza, who by the way claims he's Tzetza'ei Anusim, and he actually was putting a Jewish star in some of his paintings. He was painting like this, and this is a Honduran scene, but look where he's become. How from this, over 30 years, he's become like this. And so when they attack, when the art establishment sometimes attacks artists from naive world of what they say stasis, you know, they're sort of riveted in a very, very narrow box. By the way, no one asked Monet why he only has painted 17 different water lily paintings, but lo chashuv. But these artists develop and over the course of time become so wonderful. And so we really have a lack of appreciation that we can only see and appreciate over the course of time as we see these artists develop. And so, again, I've tried to bring you on this journey, as I said, this journey that Peter Pan said of, come with me where dreams are born and time is never planned. Just think of happy things and let your heart go on wings to Never Never Land. And I think I've tried to assist you in appreciating the world.